but I believe that to be the case. Let me update and just make sure that we are live. There we go. So we're live. Sorry, we're a little bit delayed. I apologize for that. And let me mute. So apologies. I have with me Tim Ball, one of our 3 new council members for this year. And so I thought we'd just get together before the start of the new year and talk about what Tim has learned this year, experiences that he expected and things he didn't expect, and also just mention what kind of priorities we're looking at for this year. And maybe that's the place to start out. When we start next year, where do you think we are priority-wise, Tim, on what we're going to focus on for next year? Can you hear me, Tim?
Okay. I can hear you.
All right. Perfect.
I think the priority for next year, I know that we probably will have a experience build out next year. Don't you think so, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. We'll start the Boyer project will start in earnest. So they'll start building homes south of the high school. The road will get finished. The east-west connector will get finished. We're also looking at building out the Reinhardt property there, south of 10250 and east of Wilmington. And that is where Madison Avenue is going to connect with Canal Boulevard as well. And so
I believe we'll be emphasizing a lot of infrastructure and construction projects and several improvement projects for the city. So
yeah, and some of the improvements are going to be specifically around how do we deal with the trails. We did make improvements this year. We're expecting a trail plan to come back from the Parks Department and the Roads Department in February, I think. Was that correct? That they're planning on sharing with us a 5-year plan for trail maintenance, like our road plan that we have that we're working on right now.
I believe so.
So that'll be nice to have some visibility on, when the trails are going to be redone and in what areas, so that at least if a trail is bad or a section of trail is bad, we'll know when that's going to get taken care of. And knowing where that's going to get taken care of is always much nicer than saying, well, it'll never get taken care of, right? So we'll know where those are. And it looks like we'll experience our first snowstorm of the year this weekend, or our second anyway. And our snow plows will be out on the weekend, I think. Be patient. If your road doesn't get fixed, all of you should have gotten with your bill, either electronically or physically in the mail, a priority map for which roads get plowed first. And so you'll know, okay, if there's a really bad snowstorm and it just keeps piling up, the first priority is to keep the A roads clear. And those are the ones that affect the most traffic. So if it's really snowing and it's quite heavy, a residential road you live on might not get plowed as fast as you'd like it. But just bear in mind, we're trying to prioritize resources to help the most people. But we do get to the residential roads eventually. And where you live, Tim, that main road, is that 11800 that goes by the school there?
It is.
And that gets impacted by snow a lot. I mean, they can almost drive through that, go up and down Highland Boulevard and come back and do it again on a really good storm. So I don't know what kind of storm this will be. I would really like to have a white Christmas. I always like white Christmases, and we do need snow in the mountains. But I don't see any questions. We have a couple people watching. That's good. So thank you for joining us. But let's talk a little bit about you were on the planning commission before, and so you had some preparation for city council. But what was different about city council than planning commission? Um,
I think what's different is we deal with a lot with the nuts and bolts of running the city. And I know that you dedicate a lot of time to that. And in the planning commission, we're just reviewing proposals for developments and zoning and other things, but it gets down to the practical application and actually running the city. And so, although it was a very good training, I would say, or preparation, I don't think anyone really understands or realizes how much goes into it. There's so much that goes into it. Another thing is when you're at meetings or even when you're on the planning commission, it seems like everything is so obvious. There's black and there's white and there's no middle ground. And then you're put in a position to hear both sides of a story or an argument or a presentation, and you realize there's very little black and white, that a lot of things are actually gray, and you just have to take that information and make the best possible decision that you can, knowing that there will be people disappointed with the decision and knowing there'll be people happy with the decision. And a lot of those people were your supporters, people that voted for you, and your neighbors. And so it makes it challenging. And so instead of just saying, gosh, the mayor should have voted that way, you really, really empathize with the position he's in and the other members of the city council and the city employees. When you really understand what they are dealing with, and you realize it's way harder than it looks.
yeah, and more complicated. I don't know if you know Mike Kennedy or not. He used to be our representative, our state
Yes.
representative. And I got to know him really well. And so one of the times we were talking, he said, most issues aren't God and the devil. He said, it's just not that way. And he said some people treat everything as that, but he said in point of fact, most aren't. And so, like you said, it's complicated and there are multiple sides. And what I learned was, I might vote one way when I was on the council, and another councilman might vote the other way, but he wasn't evil or she wasn't evil because they didn't agree with me. They just had a different perspective, which had validity to it. So it's just a matter of perspective sometimes. And it isn't.
It really is.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it really is. And especially when people come in and make a very passionate plea for their case. And it's hard to tell someone, I'm not going to vote the way you want me to, because they feel so strongly about it. And you're right. It's not God and the devil. It's good people with differences of opinion.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, like, what was the most difficult decision you made? And let me just share, when I was on the council, this is not a decision I had any preparation for, or any other council member had a lot of preparation for, but we had someone come in, the wife of a gentleman who was dying and had been a longtime Highland resident, and his dying wish was to be buried in his backyard. And okay, so that's a new one. First of all, can we even do that? Is it legal? And then there's the question of, should we do it? And it took a lot of research had to be done, and the net was, you can do it, but you have to then you have to create a separate parcel on your property that represents that grave. So then it becomes an island. And if you sell your home, you can sell that separately, or you could keep it in the family. But if you keep it in the family, then how are you going to have access to it? And it just got really complicated. So as much as I had wanted to be helpful to this person, it made it really, really difficult going forward to have that property have this little island of a cemetery in it, from a pragmatic point of view. So I had decided to vote no, and then I had to be out of town that week that the council meeting was at. And the mayor had to vote in place of me. Now, good for him. What he did was he said, okay, Rod can't be here, but I know how Rod wanted to vote, so I'm going to vote the way he wanted to vote on this issue, which was nice for him because they were like personal friends of his as well. But those are really hard issues. You don't see them coming. You're not expecting to have to make that kind of a decision, and there's surprises all the time, right? So is there something that was surprising to you this year? If you look back on what's happened?
I think so. There was one particular issue where feelings and emotions were so high that it actually pitted neighbor against neighbor. I was really surprised that it really divided neighborhoods, and it made it very, very difficult to vote. And so I don't want to go into the issue, but because of tensions were so high, emotions were high, and people would call me and make these impassioned pleas for both sides. And what I've had to rely on is I have to remember when both sides seem like good choices, I have to remember that I made promises to those that voted for me, and that I had to go back to my core principles and those issues that actually compelled me to run for city council, and then stay true to those. But it was very difficult because people felt so strongly on both sides of this particular issue.
Yeah, and like you said, whichever way you go, somebody's not going to be happy, right?
Oh my goodness, you would not be, well, you wouldn't be surprised, but some people may be surprised at some of the letters I've received where people made me out to be just a terrible person because I didn't want to approve something that really didn't seem that important. And so letters that were, let's just leave it at not very complimentary. And
you wouldn't use them for a job reference if you were interviewing.
No, and I certainly wouldn't use highlights from the letter that included some of those interesting words. So.
Yeah, that is always surprising. But people get passionate about stuff that affects them, right? It is.
They really do. And then, if I may, there was another. It wasn't an issue. It's more of an underlying situation where people will make a presentation that seems very altruistic or very like a very good point. And then after you pass something, you find out something a little more, I can't think of the term right now, but something a little more self-centered. They do it, and usually it goes back to money. And you can say, boy, I didn't see that coming, to where they argued for something, they got it, and they argued for it for a reason other than they presented. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And
yeah.
That was surprising. That was eye-opening, and that was a good education, because now you do a little more homework.
Yes, and you know what? You can always be surprised. And I think what I like about our council in general is that we, you're very trusting, you believe people, and I think that's a good trait. And you do have to verify, trust but verify. But I would rather that people be trusting and have a positive outlook than be the cynic all the time, right?
I completely agree, because I think part of the responsibility of leadership is to carry it out in an effective way, but also to be positive about the future, because people look to you as the mayor and occasionally to the city council to create a plan that is positive and optimistic. Everyone wants to feel good about the future. And I think that's an important part of what we do, is to create a situation in which that can occur. And it's not easy, but it's good when the results are good. And I think that we've done a lot of really good things this year, which brings me to one other. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm interested now.
Well, one other quick point. You said that we get along really well, and I think we really do. Even people that I didn't even think that I would like prior to getting on the city council, I'm finding those are the ones I like the most. You find out that the people that are serving are doing so for the right reasons, and the others on the council are just really good, really smart, really dedicated people. And that's one thing that is difficult, is when we disagree. The difficult thing is to argue with them because you like them so much. But it's good to air out all the different aspects of an argument.
It really is
a really good decision. And sometimes I feel, it's difficult because I know sometimes the vote's going to be 4-1, and I'm the one vote, but you got to stick with what you believe. And then after the meeting's over, everyone, well, you don't shake hands anymore, but everyone is very friendly, and we respect each other, and we respect our neighbors and friends and fellow citizens of the city. And so I've been very pleased with what I've discovered about my fellow city servants and their goodness and their dedication to the citizens of Highland.
Yeah, I agree. Now, sometimes people have passionate opinions and disagree, but in the end, we do get along. It is true. In the moment, it might seem like, oh, how could they possibly like each other? It's funny. It just works out that you figure it out, because it's nice that you have to work together, right? That you can't just say, oh, I don't want to be their friend and then walk away. You have to see them the next week or the week after, and it forces you to learn to like people that you might not normally think you'd like, and that's nice. I guess it's for those of you that are
really nice.
For those of you that are LDS and have served a mission, and have companions that you may have thought you wouldn't like, but ended up liking. I know my last one, I thought it was going to be a disaster, and it turned out to be my best when I was on my mission. We have a question from CS, and he says, hi, I'm 12 and watching for the first time. I just have a question about when the library programs will be in person again. You can just answer whenever. Well, CS, and I don't know your name other than that, but thanks for joining us, one. And two, the library programs, when the governor came out with his pretty strict order a few weeks ago, when we were getting a lot of COVID cases, and said you need to be extra cautious, we asked the library to stop for 2 weeks, but we weren't sure if the governor would continue those stricter mandates. Now, he didn't, but when they canceled for the library, it was easier just to say, okay, let's just cancel through the end of the year and then start planning for January. They on again, off again, really didn't work for them. So while they could be doing them now, technically, they just decided it was easier to just say, okay, we're going to be done through the end of the year and then we're going to start. And that helped them from a planning perspective because it does take advanced planning to do a program. So we will have programs again. They will start up in January. So just watch the schedule. Uh, I didn't read the library page on the newsletter this month. So I don't know if they mentioned what they're going to be doing in January. But if you go to their website, they will have their programs there, and they will start up again in January. And so that's the story. That's the backstory behind why they're canceled through the end of the year, instead of just during the time the governor said. It was 2 weeks that he said for the next 2 weeks, let's do this, and then we'll do a check again. And I did talk to the library director. She really, really, really wants to do the programs, and but she said, look, it's difficult from a planning perspective if we can't know in advance. So they just made that call, and I support it. So look forward to that. I'm sure they'll have some exciting things. I know that they've done some really interesting programs in the past, I think with robots, and I think they even had a, what do you call it, 3D printing. They might have had a 3D printing, or if they didn't, they're planning on doing one in sometime in the future. So hopefully I didn't let the cat out of the bag if it was something coming in the future, but that could be something to look forward to if it hasn't happened already. So thanks for asking. Anything else from CS? Feel free to just type in something else. Didn't mean to interrupt him. So one thing that's interesting this year that some of you might not have noticed yet, but in Heritage Park, we are putting up Christmas lights. And I drove down there tonight just before this meeting, and it's really nice. They're not done yet. They'll be done in a few days. How about that? I just saw a text. I don't remember what it said, but they'll be done in a few days, and we may have an official turn the light on. But in the meantime, while they're putting them on, they're leaving them on. So come and enjoy. It's really going to be pretty spectacular. And it's having Christmas lights be part of Highland City has been something I've wanted to happen since I was on the council. And then when I was mayor, it's not as easy to move something that little along, but thankfully this year the council was really adamant that we do something. So you can thank the council this year for the lights. I'll take no credit on that one. It was the council. So good for you. You're part of that council, Tim. And if anybody wants to just drive down Alpine Highway by Heritage Park, it looks really nice, but it's not quite done. The other thing that's interesting in the sky, I don't know if you know this, my wife told me about it, but we have a couple planets that are aligned or are getting, I can't remember the two planets, but they're two planets that on December 21st are going to be lined up right next to behind each other. And therefore it'll be a brighter star. And the last time this happened and you could see it was 800 years ago. So that's kind of cool. And I guess if we want to, the council can take credit for that too. Right, Tim?
Yes.
We may as well. But Christmas lights, thank the council. Some of you may be wondering what the heck happened with the road going between Alpine Highway and North County Boulevard. That's an interesting story. So in September, they were putting in footings for a bridge that crosses the American Fork Canyon, the river that comes out of there, which is dry quite a bit of the year, but does have water in the spring and early summer. And when they were as they got to pour the footings, their supplier of rebar ran out of rebar, and it was some kind of a COVID-related delay. So they had to wait about 6 weeks to pour those footings to build the bridge, which put them not way past, but a few days past the deadline for pouring asphalt on roads. So we missed that by a few days, maybe a week. And that means when the asphalt factories open up again in the spring, we'll start paving right away, and we can expect that to be done by the end of May. So that's really good news, and maybe even earlier, but I like to be conservative. So that'll happen early next year, and I think everybody will be pleased. Or most people, I shouldn't say everybody, but I don't think it will be as bad as people think, that it will have some negative impact on that, but it will be a great benefit to the community in general. So Tim, is there anything that you learned other than what you've talked about with being on the council? Anything else that you've learned? You mentioned that it's more complicated than people think, and there are multiple sides of the story, and people do get passionate about things. So is your skin any thicker?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There have been times after a heated debate in the chamber where there were people outside who were angry with each other. And when I went outside, they were not happy with me, because if anyone knows me, especially those that supported me, you know that I'm really big on sticking with the city vision and the city plan. And that has to do a lot with zoning and the spirit of the city, which is large lots and open spaces, and maintaining kind of a country feel, but yet being close to everything. And I stick with that sometimes, and that makes some people angry. So I go outside and people express that anger at times. And I mean, no one's ever aggressive physically or anything, but they have no problem expressing their opinions. But one time really surprised me. This really surprised me, where this gentleman came in several times over the course of a year to get something approved. And I would always vote no. I said, this is a great development, but it's not consistent with the city of Highland and our vision. And then finally, it was approved on a 4-to-1 vote. And as you probably have guessed, I was the one vote against. And I went out, and he was there, and he gives me kind of a half hug, pats me on the back, and he said, I understand completely why you voted no. I'm happy that we're moving forward, but no hard feelings. And that was a great experience, to where, because I expressed my opinion in an appropriate, respectful way, even though it was different than his opinion, he respected me for that. And I really appreciated that. That was a good moment for me.
Yeah, there are those moments when people say thanks. I know, like for me, when the other development here in the area, the townhomes behind Ace Hardware and Arctic Circle were approved, that was a very, very contentious, heated debate. And it was one that we really couldn't say no to, because what they were doing conformed with code, and you just can't say no to something like that if it conforms to code. And it's kind of the unfortunate thing about we have a term when we are approving things called conditional use permits. And the implication of conditional use when I first heard it was, okay, that means optional, right? You can approve it or not. But the truth of the matter is the way state law is written, if something is conditionally allowed, it means it is allowed, and you can only not allow it if there are negative impacts that cannot be mitigated. And there's some things that people would consider to be a negative impact that can't be legally considered to be a negative impact. For example, if it affects a neighboring property value, or if it obscures my view, right? But there can be negative impacts like sound or noise if it's any kind of commercial building, or traffic, and you have to mitigate it if you can. But mitigating does not mean eliminating; it just means making it better. So our hands are pretty tied when it comes to conditional use permits, provided they're conforming with code. But there was one gentleman who was very passionate about the issue, and he and I exchanged emails multiple times. And I would have thought that he would just not be my fan at all. And yet, when the issue was over, we were very cordial to each other. And then when I decided to run for mayor, he was one of the first ones that talked to me and said, "Hey, I'm 100% behind you. What can I do? How can I help?" And that was a real pleasant surprise, that you could disagree with somebody on an issue and yet really end up respecting each other. And we talk probably once every 3 months, and he always asks me, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Which is really, really nice, and I just so appreciate him. And there are a few people like that you bump into, that you're not expecting to get to know them very well, and then all of a sudden you become really, really, really close friends. And it's nice. It's part of what I like about politics, which is often viewed as a bad word, right? Oh, you're a politician, it's a bad thing. But whenever I've got involved in political issues, whether we win or lose, I always end up making some really good friends. Always, every time. And they're long lasting. I have friends from when I started getting active in local politics here from 12 years ago that have become really, really good friends. And I touch base with them every once in a while. And they're not even in the city. They could be over in Saratoga Springs or in Salt Lake County or South Utah County. But it's like when you're doing something like this, it's almost like you're in war together, and now you become war buddies. And there's a lot of forgiveness of other faults on all sides. So that's something that's really nice about being involved. And it sounds like you're discovering that as well, Tim.
Yes, I am, and it's been a really pleasant surprise. It's almost, people recognize that you're, agree or disagree, you're working for the city and for the good of each other. And so there is that kind of camaraderie that only comes from working together and fighting the good fight. So I completely agree.
Yeah, and yeah, we could even go and go back to one of the things that got approved this year that has come before the council many times, the Apple Creek project. That is it started out as a long time ago, multiple years ago. I was on the council, so that would make it at least 4 years ago, because I was still on the council for a while when we were discussing this. So at least 4 years ago, they came with a plan for the area behind UCCU and to the north that had some commercial buildings, and had, uh, we'll call them condominiums, um, in buildings, that they wouldn't have been rented. They would have been sold or long-term leases. Um, and there were 210 units. Now, there have been multiple iterations of stuff that came through, and the developer was just sometimes fit to be tied. I mean, really. And when a developer goes into a project, they're investing money every time they do a design, and that's not cheap. So they have skin in the game, and I understand why they're passionate. The house, Tim, you live in, and the house I live in, it was developed by somebody. So developers aren't bad per se. They just need to make money like anybody else, and um, you have to make sure that as best you can, that people develop quality products and do it nice. But they're not bad people. You just have to understand that they're not. This isn't the altruism for them. They're feeding their families or paying their bills. But anyway, he's gone through a number of designs, and the one that finally got approved after at least 3, maybe 4 different designs was it 48 units? Is that right, Tim? I think it was about 48.
I think so.
Between 40 and 48. There were some single homes, some twin homes, and some townhomes, and a couple of commercial buildings, one of which needed to have some retail on the first floor. So that would be something like a restaurant. Hopefully we can get a nice restaurant in there. But through that process, yeah, you would think the guy would hate us in the end, and yet in the end he was really nice. And I think it's going to be a really nice project. I think it's going to fit where we are. But we'll see, and we'll have some nice neighbors that we didn't have before when it's all done. And we did approve the development south of the high school to be a much different density than we would typically have, but we had some constraints that we were operating under, and I think we did get for Highland what I think is the best that we could get with respect to density. They're really excited to be developing there, and there's a lot of interest in the commercial property, which is on the side of on the North County Boulevard, on the east side of the road, adjacent to Harvey Boulevard. The south part of the property there is going to go commercial first, and we could end up with, again, some restaurants or some commercial office. I think it'd be a great place for a restaurant because you've got a lot of traffic there. You've got the LDS Temple, the hospital's just down the road, and you'll have in the end 700 residential units, or 699 in right in the vicinity there. So it should do well long term. So that's something that is going to be exciting to see develop. Anything else that you think we should talk about tonight, Tim?
I think we've covered a lot. Perhaps we could talk about specifically a couple of the projects that we're undergoing. I know that you talked about some of the roads and some other things. Is there anything else you would like to
highlight? So the Reinhardt property, I think a good thing came out of that. We ended up with a conservation easement that is going to run through the the east side of that property, that follows Mitchell Hollow. For those of you that are familiar with Mitchell Hollow Park, there's a trail that runs south of there. And right now it kind of dead ends, or it doesn't kind of it dead ends. It's something that the kids call the frog ponds. But that trail will continue down to Canal Boulevard, and it will, the area to the east and the west of the trail is being dedicated by the developer to Highland as a conservation easement, so that it can't be developed on at all. And that was a nice little pickup for us, that we got that nice, the conservation easement, and then we'll put in the trail. That trail long term will continue south of Mitchell Hall, south of Canal Boulevard, and go down to 9600, and then continue south down to the Equestrian Center, which is actually on a long-term county planning map, that trail. And so there'll be funding actually to build parts of that trail. There is an easement right now in place for most of it, except for, I think, the part south of 9600 down to the Equestrian Center. But that'll be really nice, because people now in South Highland will be able to get up and catch that trail and get all the way to the Murdoch Canal Trail, which is one of the more popular trails in the state of Utah, actually, traffic-wise. And that came, and we got that because a developer is developing homes in an area that was previously farmed. And the zoning there is R140. There was, and there still is, an ongoing push to not have a road connect to 10250 North. I expect that to be resolved, and I expect the road to go through, but it's possible it won't. If it didn't, it would be kind of sad. It would be sad for me, because now you would push that northbound traffic through Wimbledon instead of just a direct route to 10250. But this is one of those situations where there are some people that will have some negative impacts. The negative impacts usually aren't as bad as people think. We worry about the unknown a lot. I know at the beginning of COVID, we didn't know, were millions of people going to die? Was there going to be a lot of calamity? And I don't think it's as bad as people had envisioned. I mean, it's still not a good thing. We have one of our council members has COVID or had COVID, and I know several people that have. It's not pleasant, but by and large, people recover from it. And we didn't know what to expect, and it was scary. It's not as scary now, but anytime there's a change, people are always afraid, because you just don't know, right? You just don't know. So there's vacant land next to my house, and then it's not vacant anymore, and I thought it was going to be vacant forever, so I don't like that it changed. That's a common story, right? Why don't we leave it farm?
We don't necessarily like change or welcome change. So.
Yeah, but change does come, and
it certainly does.
But I think Highland has handled COVID really well. I think the city has done a good job in how we've dealt with things. We have been able to continue to serve the public generally. One thing that I've learned in talking to other mayors is we're one of the few councils that are actually meeting in person. Most of them are Zooming. Now we're meeting in person, but we've got distancing in place. And I do like that we meet in person. because it's just a different dynamic.
I like it a lot too.
I did hear an interesting story that I remember hearing about a little bit, but I was talking to a mayor yesterday or today, I can't remember, and he said, yeah, we were Zooming, and a couple of council members were chatting with some kind of an app, and they were saying things that were not necessarily kind, like some of your emails, Tim. And somehow that chat got on the screen, and it was very, very embarrassing for the people involved. And one of the council members actually came to the mayor and said, I'm willing to resign over this. Do you think I should? And he didn't end up resigning, but it was really, really embarrassing. So maybe it's a good thing that we don't Zoom, so that those kind of things don't happen. Although I don't think it would in our case. I know you do sometimes see council members talking with each other during a meeting, and I'm confessing I do that on occasion. I talk to a neighboring council member. Most of the time, it's really benign, like, and it's often kind, or I didn't realize you had that perspective, or glad you brought that up, or I hadn't thought of that. So don't be worried if you see me, or maybe you should, but I do talk, and I think other people talk to their neighbors, but a lot of time, well, I think most of the time in our case, it's just maybe trying to get additional information, or just to pass along a compliment, or a question that you don't want to interrupt the rest of the dialogue that's happening. So nothing nefarious, but
Not
it's
usually.
easy to not usually. It's easy to assume that when you don't know what's being discussed. So I apologize. I'll try and do better. That occurred to me when I was talking to him. I go, oh yeah, I do that a lot. Maybe I shouldn't so much. I don't know if it's a lot, especially now where we're pretty far apart. So let's do this. We've got 5 minutes left. I would like to wish all of Highlanders a very Merry Christmas on my behalf and behalf of staff. Staff works really, really hard behind the scenes, and I know we often think of government workers as being kind of lazy, or potentially people that don't work as hard as others. But we have one staff member that comes in at midnight sometimes to get work done, because during the day he's dealing with all kinds of issues, and he'll stay here till the morning and then go home and have breakfast and come back. Those are things that you won't see. They happen behind the scenes a lot. When there's snow going on, our guys get up and they're out sometimes like 4 a.m, and then they're out till quite late. And in some cases, it's like 7 by 24. They just trade shifts to keep the roads clear. So, when needed, they certainly go the extra mile, and on a regular basis, they do work really hard and try and do their best. So, if for some reason you're not happy with staff for whatever reason, be aware that by and large, and in fact, most of the time, they really work hard at serving you. And occasionally people have a hard day, right? You never know what happened. Their father-in-law or mother could have passed away, or they could have a kid in the hospital. So when somebody isn't happy, and this applies to everybody, not just our staff, but give people the benefit of the doubt. Okay, that would be my counsel. And again, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas. This is my favorite time of the year. I love the season. And let me just take off my mayor hat for a second. And there's a series that I just think is done really well. It's called The Chosen. And if you haven't watched that, it's really, really a great season, a great show. Certainly something worth watching during Christmas. So, Tim, I'll let you close the meeting, and we're going to end on time. Amazing.
That is amazing. I'd also like to echo the mayor's sentiments and wish everyone a Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and a happy New Year, and a successful New Year, where we can carry over some of the good of 2020, which was coming together as a city, dealing with a lot of problems and issues, and coming out and being quite successful, I believe, in many ways. I also wanted to echo his sentiments of giving people the benefit of the doubt. I think it was Plato that said, be kind to those that you meet. I'm paraphrasing. Be kind to those that you meet because you don't know what battles there are raging. And so you just have no idea. And there have been instances where I've been having a hard time, and sometimes even a stranger will do something kind and it'll completely change your mood, your attitude, and completely convert something from a bad situation to a good situation, or a sad day to a happy day, etc. I would also like to encourage everyone, because we're all going through difficult times, to possibly make it a goal to do something kind for someone else every day. It could be something little, but maybe to the person that you'd be helping or encouraging, it may have a big influence on their lives. So I'd like to thank everyone for their support and for their dedication to the city and the kindness they showed to one another and our neighbors and friends. And just thank you for that. And once again, wish you a Merry Christmas.
All right. Thank you, Tim. With that, we will sign off. Again, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the stores or at the gas station. And our best wishes to all of you. Bye.
Good night, everyone.